Hello everyone, welcome back to the Good News. I'm your host Qi Yu, temporarily taking over while Elizabeth is working on her performance at Electric Dreams Festival. Music is the moonlight in the gloomy nightlife. These words from the 18th century German writer Jean Paul are still true nowadays. While in the middle of this pandemic, 3 members kindly shared with us their music for this Good News program. I was really grateful for their kindness. Their music did bring good news alive. In fact, not just from the good news, you may have already known them or recognized their music from Sunday Jazz Night or the afternoon live performance at the quad right before London lockdown. So without further ado, let's welcome JP, Robbins, and Yuki. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for your time and your music. So perhaps we'll start from some introductions. If you can tell us a little bit about yourselves and your music careers. So let's start from JP.
Okay, well, yeah, I moved to London in 2010, and I moved here to study at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, where I did a master's degree in classical piano, which was following on from my piano studies in New Zealand. And so, yeah, I came to London with a lot of excitement about being in a big, culturally rich city, and I moved I moved into Goodenough at that time as well, and that was my my first experience of Goodenough and studying in the city, and so that's a little bit of background. But yes, I'm basically a pianist, and since I finished studying, I pursued a freelance career here in London that involves a bit of teaching, a bit of performance work, and some other things as well that I've picked up along the way. And I think you referred to the Sunday jazz nights here at Goodenough, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later, I expect. But yeah, I got into playing jazz when I was a teenager, and that became an increasing focus for me, such that at the moment I'm predominantly playing jazz. So yeah, that's a little bit of a starter about me. Was there anything else you particularly want to know?
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the jazz night later, because that is really a big thing in the Goodenough. So how about you, Yuki?
Okay, I started playing the piano when I was 5 years old, because in my house, my mother was playing the piano. She's not professional, she's just amateur, but she loves classical music. So I interested in classical music. And when I was 15 years old, I changed my subject to singing, because when I was high school student, I wanted to go to musical college, university, but my piano teacher didn't think I can be a professional pianist. So she recommended me to change my subject. Firstly, I was very shy. I hate singing in front of the people. But after I started singing, day by day, I become love singing, and I'm being opera singer now. I studied in Royal Academy of Music, an opera course for 2 years.
How about you, Robin? Have you played piano before?
Yeah, it's really pretty easy to be. No, I'm joking. Yeah, I also mainly have studied jazz, I guess, for the past 10 years or so, and I guess studying piano kind of goes hand in hand with that to a certain extent. So even if your principal instrument is something else. So for me, I'm predominantly a saxophone player. you can just learn so much from studying the piano, especially if part of that study is understanding harmony and music theory. The piano is just a really great visual representation of a lot of the concepts that we talk about in jazz and music theory. So yeah, but I would I mean I would never play it live because it would just, people would leave, to be honest. But yeah, other than that, I guess I've been in London for the past 5 years. I studied at the Royal Academy as well, but in the jazz department. So we don't really mix with the classical people too much, and vice versa. Probably a good thing. I'm not sure. And since kind of finishing there, I've just been continuing to study privately. I study Alexander technique a little bit, and then just teach and normally would obviously be gigging, but that kind of whole world is halted for the moment. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
That sounds great. Well, I think the good thing about living in Goodenough is that you can get mixed with classical people easily. To me, it's really interesting to get to know you because I studied science before, and after moved to Goodenough, I met many musicians and talked to, and not just learned about like music, but also like those theory behind music or history behind the music. So it really broadened my views. And now I would like to know more about like your experience performing in the college.
Yeah, so I mean, just echoing what you were saying, Chiyu, about how much you enjoyed meeting musicians here at the college. I have to say, for me, the other way around as well, very much, I really enjoy meeting people who don't do music, and scientists like yourself, and broadening my understanding that way. And that's certainly something I've really enjoyed about being at Goodenough. But also with the music, it's a really attractive place to be because we have some practice rooms here. We can put on concerts, things like that. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to live here, and why I think a lot of other musicians do. But the jazz nights, I started, I think it was the end of 2012 or beginning of 2013. I can't quite remember, but it started quite some years ago with myself, a singer, Maria Chen, who used to live here, and the bass player who is regularly playing with me, Tom Bartlett, when he was staying here as well. And this was it actually started in what was then called G Bar in Exile, because Willie G was under refurbishment, and the G Bar moved over to what is now the members' common room, and they installed the G Bar in there. And we were rehearsing earlier in the day there one time, and stayed for a drink afterwards, and was encouraged to play a bit more. And then we realized, actually, maybe we could do a Sunday night jazz thing. And so the first few were held in this G Bar in Exile in London House, actually. And then when Willie G reopened, it moved across to Willie G. But it was really just about creating a platform for some jazz, and for some, not only some jazz, but some non-classical music, really, at Goodenough. And even though I'm a classical musician as well, and there are a lot of platforms for classical music at Goodenough, regular concerts and things like that. And so I was keen to have a kind of quite relaxed but informal kind of music session that was allowed jazz and other non-classical kind of forms of music to be shared, and with a really friendly audience in a nice relaxed way. And it was so it was something that I was keen to do anyway with other people. And then we thought, well, if people want to hang out while we play some jazz and stuff, then that's great. And it's been wonderful because it's become a regular occurrence now, and I think people really love it. And we invite regularly various guests from the music scene around in London who'll pop by if they're around and come in. So it's a really nice community, sort of music community thing, and so yeah, it's certainly been something I've enjoyed doing, and a really big part of my time at Goodenough.
Yeah, I mean, I came to Goodenough 4 years ago, and I think when I was having the tour around here before I came, so I lived in London for 1 year before. They mentioned that there was, you know, this regular jazz night happening, and it sounded really, really cool. And yeah, it really lived up to expectations when I came here. It's just a really nice weekly, you know, play for me. You know, it's been great that JP's kind of organised it, and it kind of you know, to a certain extent, it's just something now that happens, and you don't have to kind of put in a lot of work around it, because everybody knows. That's the wonderful thing about having like a regular gig like that. It's everybody knows that it's happening, and some weeks you'll get, you know, quite a few people turning up, and it's really great. But it's, you know, it's always there for you. So I think during my time when I was at Academy, you know, it was just quite a busy time for me. So I wasn't going as regularly, but since leaving that kind of formal study, I've gone a bit more, and yeah, it's great for jazz musicians as well. We're expected to know a certain amount of, you know, to know a certain amount of repertoire, you know, depending slightly what you want to do, because jazz is a very kind of broad genre. But certainly, if you want to become a jazz musician who plays a lot of what we call jazz standards, you're expected to learn and to memorize those tunes. So for me, it's just like a really great way. It's like I'll start learning a tune a few days before, and then it will be like test time, you know, going down to the Sunday jazz night, and I'll normally forget like half of it, and then JP will like cover me for a bit, and then I'll kind of, you know, remember it again. And that was kind of when quarantine kicked in, and when everything stopped happening, that was sort of where the kind of tunes at 2 came from. I was just missing playing for people to an extent. This is going to sound really selfish, but also just for my own like selfish kind of, I want to get better, and I need like a little motivation there. So if I kind of fix a time and a regular sort of performance slot where I'm just going to like play a new tune, then that's just going to get me into the practice room a bit, and rather than just sort of sitting around and not doing anything, because, you know, there's no performances happening at the moment. It's a really strange time. There's just no gigs at all, so you have to kind of create, you know, and find a way for you to keep on developing and keep on expressing whatever you do. So yeah,
I was gonna say that, speaking of quarantines and lockdowns, it really kind of separate people from each other, but it is also often said that music connects people. So yeah, to me, I feel quite emotional when watching you play the saxophones at the quads.
In a good way, I hope.
Yeah, and also Yuki took up that position, sing the songs about hometowns at the quad as well. So, and I think, yeah, it was really a memorable event, and like members waited at the quads every day to watch you performers. And when you started to play, like everyone becomes so quiet and somehow like connected to each other. So looking back, it was like the calm before the storm. Yeah. So what was your thought when you stepped in the quads?
It was, I mean, I just sent I just had this idea, and I sent Caroline an email, and she said, it like you say, it was sort of, it was a kind of a timing thing, really. None of us really knew what was coming, you know. Some were kind of maybe a bit more optimistic, sort of thinking that the whole situation would maybe breeze over when we would be back. Other people were kind of already self-quarantining before it was even imposed. So it was just a kind of quite a confusing time, and I just thought, yeah, it would be a good way, like maybe just as like almost like a routine sort of thing for people as well. I think, you know, when everything else stops, it can be really hard to keep that routine, and then all sorts of problems can arise from that. So for myself, but also for other people, I think it was quite a nice way just to have that little bookmark in the day where we can kind of come together a little bit, just have a little chat kind of halfway through the day, see how everyone's doing. Yeah, other than that, I mean, it was a little bit scary at first, but it's such a beautiful space. I'm kind of looking out my window at it now because I look right into the quad, and I'm sure Yuki will tell you more, but there's such a lovely acoustic in that space as an acoustic instrument as well. You don't have to play very much for it to sound quite, you know, you can just play like a few notes and kind of job done almost, you know. It's such a lovely sound that you get from it, so it's kind of a joy to play in as well. Yeah, but maybe Yuki, I don't know if you felt that when you were singing in there as well.
Just a joyful time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like the sound of the space as well, like just the singing?
Yes, very much. The acoustic was perfect. I didn't expect the acoustic was so good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think if you, especially as like a, you know, as an opera singer, you know, if you're singing at a certain volume, then you kind of get all of that back, don't you, I guess?
Yeah, I didn't need to sing loudly because of that. So much acoustic there.
So Yuki, you have sing in many different venues, including your schools and also the great halls, and you, in fact, I think right before the lockdown, you just finished your annual performance at school. So, like, what was your thoughts at the time when you sat on the quad and sing the songs about hometown to the rest of members?
Hometown?
Yeah, Furusato.
Yeah. In the quarantine, my short recital, I sang about my hometown. The title is Hometown in Japanese because during the lockdown, almost many students in the good enough, they couldn't go back to their own countries, and I thought they are missing their countries. So I chose that song for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the most touching songs that I have ever heard. Mm-hmm. Especially I know Japanese, so to me it's something that very familiar.
Even if people doesn't understand Japanese, the melody is very beautiful. I hope that the music was healed people's heart.
Yeah, so people still remain in the college, probably knows what was going on in the college. The college closed communal spaces, including the music room. For me, it was a bit annoying, but still okay, as I could remotely control my computer in the laboratory and do some works. But without music rooms or some instruments in the college, it must be very difficult for you to keep practicing music.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult time for everyone, but I think definitely musicians. For me, I was kind of lucky in that I have a keyboard in my flat, So I was able to still work with that, even though my fingers were missing the feel of a proper acoustic piano, of course. But it was better than nothing. I guess for me, the thing I missed and still miss the most is playing in a group with other musicians, because as a jazz musician, we do a lot of that. And I looked at various ways we might be able to do this remotely. There is some software out there which enables it to happen with very low latency, but unfortunately the firewall at the Goodenough IT team work prevented that being a possibility. But yeah, as you mentioned, I did manage to do some live streaming, which was nice, and a way to kind of feel like I'm still performing, still alive as a musician. But yeah, it's difficult.
It was very great to see you like live stream that event like almost every Sunday night. And last week you did kind of have a group to play together at a jazz night.
Finally, yeah.
End of March and 1st of April, we couldn't practice in the GC's practice rooms. So firstly, I tried to sing classical music in my room, but my neighbors complained about that. So I couldn't practice in my room again. So I thought I have to change my working style in my room. So I bought condenser mic and audio interface for recording. And I tried to sing some pop song and animation songs, because the sound is much smaller than singing opera arias. And I'm trying to recording for my YouTube channel. And luckily I went back to Japan, and I'm doing my self-quarantine for 2 weeks. But after this, I could play some accompanists again. So I hope I will start to singing classical music again.
And to our audience, if you have watched our first episodes, Yuki let us use her songs, Small Sky.
I played with a friend of mine, and she's living in Japan, that works remotely. I record only my singing part, and my friend is flutist, so she played the flute part, and I made one video.
I would imagine like you are actually playing next to each other's, with just different cameras. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I had a similar experience to Yuki in the just as I guess we weren't allowed into the practice rooms, and I play a loud instrument. So yeah, I could do a little bit of what we call kind of maintenance practice here and there. But yeah, I just it would have been unfair on a lot of other members in surrounding rooms, who had exams and dissertations. So yeah, so I kind of had a little break as well, which was quite nice, and just was exploring some other avenues really. I think a lot of musicians, what Yuki's just been saying, it's a good example of a way in which she's tried to diversify a bit, and a lot of musicians I think have been doing that during this period, because they've just realized, putting all of your eggs in one basket and only being a performing musician, that's hard enough at the best of times, even if you're really, really good and successful and well known. But to rely on that, especially, at the moment, it's just impossible. So I've been looking a little bit at getting into sound recording and sound engineering. So I've been doing some research in those kinds of fields. and just thinking, obviously I've only got one more year left at Goodenough, so just sort of thinking a little bit more long term about other little ways maybe I can make money and survive, but also things that I'm interested in doing as well. So yeah, this whole recording pursuit is one of those, and yeah, that's kind of been my life in lockdown. It's sort of opened up a little bit the past month or so, where we've been allowed back into rooms and you can practice again and get back in shape, but you know, still without any kind of performance opportunities and without any gigs happening in London, it just, you know, it's not that there's never a point in doing it, because obviously to a certain extent you're doing it for the love of doing it, and I think most musicians really love practicing, but to do it without any kind of goal and without any kind of performance is pretty hard going sometimes. So it's been quite a nice time to try and find some other things to do as well, that are related to music.
The music we use for you, the Confirmation.
Yeah. So Confirmation is a jazz standard, which I was talking a little bit about earlier on. So it's a Charlie Parker composition. So Charlie Parker is one of the most famous and influential saxophonists, and actually jazz musicians full stop of all time, really. He was around kind of from the 40s to the early 50s. It's a really influential figure in the bebop, kind of one of the creators of bebop music, which is kind of really the you know, sort of one of the roots of jazz music, really, where everything is sort of developed from. So that was one of his compositions, but how it was made was in the Churchill room, and sort of one of the things that I've missed most since lockdown is, as JP said, just sort of playing with other musicians. So I used to invite friends over. Maybe I shouldn't say this, it's all related to Goodenough, but I used to invite friends over to just play music maybe a couple of times a week. There would be friends from the course I was studying on, or just from kind of friends that I'd made on the London jazz scene. And it used to be such a great thing. You know, it would be like a couple of afternoons a week, and I would invite someone over, we would play a few tunes, we would have a cup of tea, play a bit more, and then, you know, go out for a beer or something. And it was just a really nice way to spend my time that I'm just sort of missing quite a lot at the moment. But yeah, that particular track was recorded with a really great double bass player who lives in London, called Tom Riviere, who I've known maybe for about 10 years when I was studying on my undergraduate degree. Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to do it again soon, because it's a great way to play music.
Yeah, I really look forward to that. Yeah, when we made the podcast program, we feel so lucky and thankful that we could use your music. In my opinion, that definitely helped us to connect one episode with another episode. And especially like in the episodes of Dr. Andres in the pandemic, we use JP's songs for All We Know. And the song is about the peace that comes from acknowledging we don't really know anything about what's going to happen, but that's okay. And which did depict what I felt during the pandemic and what I wanted to convey about in that episode. Yeah. So JP, could you talk a little bit about that song?
Yeah. So that tune, For All We Know, is from the Cornerstone Suite, which is my sort of debut solo record, which is a suite of compositions that came about over quite a long period of time, and I eventually put them together in this one suite that I think sort of has an arc or a narrative to it that sort of seems to work quite well. And I experimented once by playing it as a solo piano kind of concert and in a small venue with a small group of friends, and I recorded it just as a live recording of my sort of trying out the concert, and that ended up being the recording that I've released. So thank you for asking to use it on your podcast, because it's yeah, I'm very happy for people to hear it, and you can
free advertising.
Yeah, and yeah, you can stream it on Spotify and all the digital music places, and the vinyl records are meant to arrive in just over a week, so I'm looking forward to getting the vinyl.
Yeah, we'll definitely post the link below this video again, so do check out.
Thank you.
Are you working on any new recordings or making new songs at the moment?
Yeah, I have some plans for the next record, which will be a collaborative record, so it will involve probably quite a few duos, and maybe 1 or 2 trio items, but maybe 6 or 7 tracks of more recent compositions, and involve some collaborations with other people. So I need to get on organizing that. I have an idea of the music I want to play, but yeah, some of the planning that will go into that I need to do. But I'm excited to move forward onto some more onto some new stuff. And I think getting that first record out was a real quite a big deal for me, and it took a long time to kind of get it together, and also for me to I guess I had some, it was a process for me to kind of come to terms with releasing a first record. I always felt it would never be good enough. I was always waiting for, like, oh, it must be perfect. It's the first record. And then I had a realization that at some point, well, no, you just need to let go and just get it out there, and then not be so precious about releasing more music. So that's my own personal journey about trying to. But now I'm really trying to sort of release a lot more music and not be so hold it so close to my chest. So yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a big thing. I don't know if that's a big thing in the classical world as well, but certainly I think a lot of young jazz musicians feel quite tentative about releasing I mean, I know I do, about releasing a record, you know, just sort of, and it kind of all sort of stems from not being comfortable with yourself. I think to a certain extent, it's not really what other people think. There's a really good quote by a very famous saxophone player called Sonny Rollins, who used to take these very long sabbaticals from performing music live. So and during that time, he would spend hours and hours a day practicing, but just not performing. And he was asked about this in an interview, and he said it's all about being comfortable with yourself. It kind of doesn't really matter what other people think, because to a certain extent, whatever you play, people are going to enjoy it, you know, especially if you're Sonny Rollins. But generally speaking, to the average listener, you know, it all sounds good, and it's just a joy to go and watch other people playing music. I think, you know, that's what I feel when I go and see some other people playing music. I'm not picking up on every little detail and every little mistake. That's not how we appreciate music, really. It's the overall experience. So he just talked about, you know, getting to that point where you are comfortable with yourself is quite a big challenge, but that's almost a bigger thing than what other people think.
I think being able to share the music, you know, which ultimately we all you know, are passionate about, but that being able to share that music is really important for us, and Good Enough is a wonderful environment where we can do that. So that's great.
Yeah. And JP, after like how many years living good enough, you have moved out very recently.
Yes, I've had a couple of beautiful chapters living here, and yeah, initially when I was studying, then I moved away for a bit, and then I've just come back with Anjali, my partner, for one final year, which has been it's been wonderful, if a little strange, and kind of strange to leave good enough in these circumstances. But no, I know that I'll always, still, well, certainly in the next, even for the next few years, be involved with Good Enough in some musical ways through my work in the Bloomsbury Festival as well, and also also because I have friends here, so yeah, which is just nice.
Yeah, are you going to play in the next Sunday's Jazz Night?
Yeah, I think we'll keep those going. I would be really nice if some more jazz musicians join in September, but Robin has kindly agreed to take over the helm and to ensure things keep running smoothly, which I'm very, very grateful for. So thanks, Robin. But yeah, I plan on coming back when I can, and I think certainly this Sunday we should be going ahead, and hopefully the government guidance will be updated soon, such that wind instruments and singers will be allowed. There's some sort of yeah, it's a little bit strange because the guidance is not really reflective of reality when it comes
questionable
to this, but,
guidance. We'll call it questionable guidance.
Yeah. But hopefully the relevant studies will have been finished, and the guidance will be updated soon, so that we can have saxophonists like Robin back and stuff, and some singers and stuff as well. So
yeah, as JP says, we're as a wind instrumentalist, apparently I spray water everywhere when I play, which I wasn't aware of, but I'm now going to be a lot more careful about spraying water everywhere. So when I'm allowed to spray water everywhere again, then I can play with other musicians. But yeah, I guess maybe from September, me and JP still need to talk about some of the finer details. But yeah, I'll try and take it over and keep it all going, and hopefully we can kind of get other members back in one room again, and even if it's like reduced amount of people, but just that live, going back to that live music thing about experiencing it, not on a computer screen or just in the flesh, is a really important part of the music, and it would be really great if we can kind of kick off next year and welcome in new members, just even if it's like a little ticketed event or something, and we just have like 5 or 10 people in Willie G at a time. That would be really great. But yeah, we will see. Yeah,
I was thinking that maybe I can join you for the next week.
Fantastic, you're really welcome. But again, that's a recorder, that's a wind instrument, so you're going to spray water everywhere when you play that.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful. You've got to, I don't know, wear a face mask or little hole for the recorder. I don't know. Yeah, we'll work it out. It'll be fun.
Yeah. And also, Robin, we'll keep in touch in the next year. So, I mean, I hope you two both have a great, wonderful summers. Yeah. And also,
thanks for doing this as well, Chi. It's really, it's a really nice thing to happen.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to get to know some different people. So, yeah, thanks very much.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks to Betty as well, to Elizabeth, who isn't with us, but everyone should go and check out her show, right? Like I think I'm gonna watch it tonight. It sounds really, really cool. So yeah, go Elizabeth.
So that's all for Good News Day. I'm your host Yu, and thank you so much for watching We may or may not see you next week, but stay tuned and have a good night. Right, see you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye. See you later.